Attention please. This ScotRail service from Dunfermline Town has been derailed due to a points failure.
Please mind the gap.
Let's see if we can cut a whole album while we're tripping on acid. These were the words of George Clinton to his Funkadelic bandmates as they entered the studio in July 1970. The resulting album, Free Your Mind and Your Ass Will Follow, peaked at number 92 on the Billboard charts and is predictably something of a chaotic mess. I suspect we'll never know if Michael Tidser was channeling the spirit of the psychedelic collective when he urged his squad to free their minds before Friday night's Fife derby, but what followed shared none of the freewheeling LSD-laced creativity of Clinton's acid rock, and it looks increasingly likely that the only thing his ass will be following is James McPake's right out the East End Park door. This is the Oh No 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 podcast. I am Duncan Cameron and we have got a derby win to talk about. Joining me tonight to bask in it, we have Robbie Weir. First of all, how are you, Robbie?
I am absolutely fantastic. It's great to come on after a derby win. It's even better when your neighbours are absolutely stinking. So if there is any Dunfermline fans who, for whatever reason, have decided to tune in, get it right up you.
Yeah, fair play. We've got Scott Fleming as well. How are you, Scott?
Yeah, really good, mate. Fair play for that intro, but some of them still amaze me how much detail you managed to get into them. But I think everyone will say the same. You're always going to have a much better weekend when you get when it's a Rovers win, but also when it's a win in a derby. So can't complain.
No, definitely not. We've got Blair Hopcroft as well. How are you, Blair?
I'm very well, mate. I'd actually like to just take a moment to send my best wishes to Michael Tidser, who's obviously suffering from an illness, having lost his voice. Hope you get well soon, mate. Hope the job works out.
I think that stemmed all their support, didn't it? Because they all went very quiet after the weekend, didn't they?
Just a bit.
Yeah, looking forward to hearing his thoughts at some point. Because you think that'll clear up and he'll be able to tell us what he thought and how that went. And fresh from the wheels of steel, we've also got Alan Douglas Munn as well. How are you, Alan?
I'm really good, mate. I'm loving the fact that we're doing this a full 2 days after the win, because it's kind of made the derby win feeling kind of spread throughout the whole weekend, which is brilliant. And I'd just like to pass my best wishes on to the guy that does the Pars review on Twitter, because that's possibly the most entertaining thing I've watched all weekend, including the derby win. It was brilliant.
It's my new alarm. I'm going to wake up to that every morning.
I had it on and I was listening to it, and Emma was sitting there, my girlfriend, she's sitting next to me like, he's proper raging, eh? I was like, oh yes.
Hey, look, fair play for doing it, because I have to tell you, winding me, very much the entire kind of ability to press record when we do this is because at least I know that you guys are here as well, and there's a kind of shared the thought of just sitting down and just straight down the barrel delivering my thoughts after a game like that.
There was one at the end of I think it was the 5th derby loss last season, where he just goes, well, another defeat to Rafe Rovers, and I'm like, yes, there we go.
The thing is, with those kind of things, you do get to a point where you watch something like that and you start to feel a bit of sympathy. No, there yet. It was so good. Just absolutely glorious. Loved it.
Again, it's a local fan putting in for the local team, which is great.
Absolutely.
When it's your rivals, though, you're ripping.
Totally.
You're ripping.
I still think that you've got to
knowledge as well.
But you know, you have to have the measure of yourself to know when you've won a game and been shit, or do you know what I mean? And it was that one after the last game when they beat us 3-1. And he piped on about how glorious they were. I'm like, it was a turgid game between two turgid teams, and you just out-turgid us. Like,
well, even after the first derby at East End Park, he put up a what was it? It was like a review of Lewis Vaughan's performance, and it was basically him getting bodied on the touchline. And then, like, after that, you remember that, and you're like, actually, I remember, I've got zero sympathy for you. So, yes.
None at all. None at all.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah.
Slagging hour.
It's quite a long list of folk to slag off on this, to be fair. Yeah. That just when you mention about being out-turgid, some comments along those lines for Michael Tidser's puppet comes in, does his voice when he can. Some interesting comments from Dunfermline's assistant manager as well that we'll come to in due course. But yeah, Friday night certainly will go down as one of the more one-sided derbies in recent memory. Well-worked goals from Finlay, Pollock and Paul Hanlon obviously put Rovers 2-0 up. I would argue, to be fair, the Rovers, I don't think ever really properly hit their stride, but really did not have to. Dunfermline offering basically zero going forward at all, to the point where once we were 1-0 up, it never really looked in doubt. They've now played 11 games under Michael Tidser and have failed to score in 8 of them. Blair, how funny is that?
I'm gonna go with Barry. Oh man, like, yeah. To be fair, like, you get a manager in, and you've always got the excuses lined up. Like, and I have them ready for Barry when if it goes pear-shaped. Like, came in and didn't have a chance to sign off a lot of boys, and there wasn't a lot. It was a January window, blah. He signed about 11 players, I think, now. Like, none of them are any good. None of them. And the fact that they keep waffling on about this centre half that they think is decent. He fell over the ball about 3 times in the second half on Friday night. Like, I'm sorry, I don't see it at all. He's had money thrown at him, Tidser. He's been given money to spend. They've signed that Connor Young, who he just clearly doesn't want to play.
Doesn't he like
yeah, it's just, I don't get any of it, and it's absolutely fucking glorious. Love it.
Just,
so bad.
Like, our team that you really just struggle to see, like, what the plan is.
No, totally.
And, like, sometimes you'll see a side and the plan clearly isn't working, but you can recognise what the plan is.
Yeah.
We talk about it a lot, but, like, good example, when we went to Falkirk in the Cup and we beat them, like, they had a very clear plan and it didn't work on that day because of what we did. But you could still see what the plan was. You could say the same for the game after that, where they did the same to us.
Yeah.
But I don't know what that Dunfermline plan is, or beyond what it is on paper, where it's supposed to be sort of passing out from the back, I guess, like patient build-up. But I don't see where it goes. I don't see, like, the ideal scenario. When he put that team out on Friday night, I can't see how that works. I can't see how it works at all. Like, really, again, you see this a lot, and you hear fans being quite down on their own team. And then sometimes you see them and you're like, they're not very good, but, like, you're over-egging this a bit. And sometimes you see a team and you're like, oh, that's very bad. And they're very bad. That actually was genuinely surprised quite how poor they were. Because all these new guys that they've signed, as you said, a lot of them seem to actually be dragging down the rest. Because there are guys in that team who can be decent on their day, who look worse than they did previously.
Well, that's actually a really important point. He's made them worse. He's made the goalkeeper look rotten, for one. The other one for me, see if you were to look at that Par side and you were to ask pretty much any of us anyway, I would have thought, who's the one player out of that squad you would take if you had to take somebody? It'd be Otto, right? Mm-hmm. He plays him at left back. Now I get we're playing Josh Mullen at right wing back, right? So it's not how ridiculous playing a player out of position. You don't take probably your single best player and play him out of position and replace him with some regen for down south that just didn't do it. It's
the World Cup
absolutely
winning
baffling.
regen. Well, right.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I'm going to step in there and just say though that I think the reason that they did that is because basically Nguyen and who's the other left back that they've got?
They've been
Both
playing
Johnson.
Jammers there.
Andre Raymond.
Yeah,
From
Andre Raymond
Johnson.
were both injured, so they didn't have any other left back. So it was either him.
Yeah, I know,
or they're
but
going to play,
play
Chalmers
somebody
in there.
else out of position is my
Play
point.
somebody else.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure Aaron Comrie, who plays at right back, has he not covered left back? And have they then got? Maybe they don't have another right back. I don't know, but no, I agree with you, Blair. I think that.
I mean, even Chris Hamilton. Put Chris Hamilton at left back because Otto's argue he's a better player in the midfield. Like
they played Joe Chalmers at left back a couple of times.
Yeah.
In Tidser's first games. That was why they
That would
signed
have been funnier,
Andre
to be
Raymond.
fair.
But
would have been
to
funnier,
Blair's
actually.
point,
I
though,
like that.
like Joe Chalmers must be a terrible left back, but at least then you'd still have you and Otto in the middle.
Yeah.
Like you're making your
It's just
midfield much worse to not make your left back that much better.
Maybe they were
Right.
just really buying into the reports that Tasha and Oakley Booth is definitely 100% a Scottish Premiership player on his day.
One to watch.
Oh.
I enjoyed watching him.
I actually did pay attention to him on Friday night, and he was utter dug meat. Like really, really.
He was,
poor. It was brilliant.
He's the
He
one
was,
as well
aye.
that I think maybe we didn't talk about it here or not, but I think lost in the headlines. He's 25,
Yeah.
so they signed like
We
a
spoke
load
about
of
this,
young
aye.
boys, and when they signed him, it was, he's won the under-17s World Cup
8 years ago.
8 years ago.
And he's played 3 games since. Like,
There's a reason for
Look
that.
at Abern, like absolutely, game totally passed them by.
the only credit I'll give him actually is for controlling himself enough in that tackle that he didn't get a red card, because the way he went into it, I was like, oh, here we go, and then he just lowered his feet at the last second and kept it kind of clean enough. That was the only pass marks he was getting for anything that night, because he was rotten.
Yeah, let's spin away from Duncan for a second, because we'll keep on coming back. I'm absolutely certain. In terms of the Rovers and the way that they lined up, it was a side that was, I suppose, sort of effectively unchanged, really, given that it was the side that played Livingston after Scott Brown had went off injured. Scott, I suppose it's a kind of two-part question. Sort of when you saw the lineup, did you have concerns or questions or anything with that? And now, with the benefit of hindsight, are you revising them, or are you still sort of where you were?
Well, I think I'd said to the guys on Wednesday when we recorded that, like, I went with a team that I would have gone with more than the fact that I knew that that's just not what Barry Robson was going to do, because I had a feeling it was going to be a similar team to the one at Livy. Just the fact that he's kind of been set in his ways of how he's wanting this team to play and how he wants us to kind of be pressing high and be on teams. And even Robson's been really trying to get at the team, I think, when we've not got the ball. I think in the summer he's going to have to work on when we do have the ball and what we want to then sort of how we want to impact the game. That's definitely going to need work. But in terms of the lineup, I didn't have too much complaints. I think I also said in our group chat during the week, I was one of the only ones I think that was kind of not really that nervous for the game. I just was confident whilst at home. Had it been at East End, it might have been slightly different, but at home I just thought, I don't see them doing anything, really. I've not seen a lot from them under Tidser, and even in that game that we did lose 3-1 at East End, they had 2 penalty kicks and a massive deflection. And even in that, I thought, to be honest, I actually thought we didn't deserve to win the game, but we didn't deserve to lose the game either that day. So
certainly not 3-1.
I think I was fairly confident going into the game, and the fact that they were just so powder puff as well up front. Just even when Chris Kane has scored obviously that hat-trick the last time against us, but even then he's still chipped in with enough goals this season when he has played. So you've always got to worry about that he might, if he gets a half chance, he might take it. But again, they got no service into him, and also just he was really irrelevant after. I think he had like that sort of half volley for like 30 yards out in the first half. After that, I forgot he was even playing. Like, genuinely, he done nothing. So, but yeah, in terms of us, I think I would hope that Bruni's not going to be out too long. I think Robson was a bit more happy with the scan results in terms that it's not going to be like a long-term thing, but I think if we could get him back, I'm not saying next Friday, but like if we can get him back fairly soon, and we're still kind of fighting for a playoff place, I think that'll be massive, because I do think that in other games against other teams that have got better players at the time, that we'll need to be better in the midfield as well, because I still think it was quite a scrappy game in the middle of the park and we didn't really control it enough, but we still won the game, so that's the end of the day.
Yeah. We didn't really have to.
No.
After 20
we
minutes.
didn't have to get out second gear, thankfully.
It's fine. I thought we were jumping about a bit, but I thought it was quite revealing in Barry Robson's post-match interview, which I enjoyed. He said that second half, they basically were just like, show us what you can do to Dunfermline, effectively. She's like, didn't send the Rovers out to go and try and rack up a scoreline, especially once they were 2-0 up. It's like, let's just, I suppose, like, play it safe. We're not going to take chances. And I think a lot of the time that would be, it is a negative strategy, I suppose, but it would be a very risky strategy. We talk about 2-0 being a dangerous scoreline, but I think it's completely justified on the evidence of what we saw from Dunfermline there. It's like, once you're 2-0 up, they're not going to do anything. You might as well just let them run themselves into the ground and give yourselves an easy last 10 minutes. Robbie, what about you in terms of the lineup and the approach to the game? Anything you're prepared to take issue with there?
Yeah, I'll openly admit that I was quite down compared to maybe the likes of Scott and Blair with the lineup. Josh Mullen had started 3 out of the 4 derbies this season as sort of right wing back, and I wasn't sure how that would potentially go, but obviously not really focusing on Dunfermline, who, when you look at, they've got Ewan Otto on the left side, they've not really got anyone coming right back at them, so it did allow that. In terms of that as well, maybe potentially you're sort of a lot made pre-match of Lewis Vaughan and sort of the return of him and potentially being an option there. And again, you can see why Robson has kept Finlay, Pollock in there. I think before the match, there's obvious questions about the lack of goals that have came up from the front line. Again, Jamie Gollan's been very unlucky. Hit the bar now 2 games at Starks in a row. But yeah, I think that before the game, I was probably a bit more on the sort of like, I knew that Dunfermline were bad, but I didn't expect them to be that bad, like that proper stinking level that you see. Like, sometimes you find teams, like, I know that it's been done before, but Cali Thistle in particular are obviously going to jump out as a similarity. Falkirk, when they went down, but they just seem to have completely no direction, as we literally found out.
Yeah, I think Airdrie are a good example. Like, we went to Airdrie recently, like at the bottom of the league, they're no use, but then actually, they're still a decent enough collection of players, and they're obviously on a bit of an uptick at the moment. Allan, as Robbie mentions there, that's Jamie Gullan that hit the bar twice in a row. This one is within the first minute. I'm guessing you must have had a pretty good angle for that.
Oh, I was convinced it was in. It just didn't quite dip enough. It was an. We all know he can hit a good free kick. He gets a lot of power and dip on it. He's got that nickname for a reason. He hits a really nice free kick, and he was really unlucky. It was just didn't quite dip enough. But he's gonna put one of these in the back of the net sooner rather than later. I think I think, you know what? I think he had another really good game. Full of running, really putting himself about, properly physical and bullying defenders at times, and kind of doing all the stuff that you kind of wanted him to do before, and he maybe didn't do. He was, even now, he does sometimes drift out wide, but he does it with a purpose, and he actually gets a result from it.
Yeah.
And his general deliveries, I know, again, jumping about a bit, his delivery for the second goal, for example, just, brilliant. And he gives us something different. He gives us a different option at free kicks. You've got Dylan Easton or him to hit it. The defenders are thinking, right, Jesus, there's at least 2 of them can hit this. You know, a few weeks' time, if you've got Vaughan coming back starting, there's potentially 3 of them on the pitch who can all hit it. So it's great options to have.
That I think the question marks beforehand, I don't think are unjustified by any means at all. With 3 games in a row, we hadn't scored a goal. And you're talking about whether or not to put out the same front line. I think that's natural questions to be raised, but very much questions answered by the first half performance. I think both Pollock and Gallen were excellent. Dunfermline really just couldn't live with them in that back line. And I mean, to an extent, understandably, given that you've got Otto's not a defender, Benedictus can't live with pace. The boy Jeremiah Chilakoa Mullen, as you say, Blair, they've been very big on him since he arrived.
Yeah.
And I think that can only be a case of in comparison to the others.
Possibly,
because
I think he looks reasonable, but like you say, compared to what else I've got, I am also fairly convinced that he played most of the match concussed and shouldn't have been on the pitch.
Well, that's obviously a big thing.
He was all arms and legs, though. Like, every header he went for, he fouled somebody. He was getting away with murder, to be fair, but just really clumsy and gangly and kind of, uncoordinated. Like, he'll maybe turn into a player. I mean, he's been called up to the 21s with Finlay Pollock. Finlay Pollock kicked him in the face, which I quite enjoyed.
That's what happens when you try and tackle someone with your face.
Yeah, it's true. And I'm all for that.
But that they never settled, but never looked like they could have settled, if you know what I mean. Like, it wasn't like we scored in the first 5 minutes and they were like, oh shit, the plan's out the window. They just never looked capable of anything. It didn't look like they started with a plan and we put them off it. It seemed like they started without a plan, but were determined to not do anything other than the plan they did not have.
Tidser on the sideline, to be fair, like you could see it a few times in the first half. He was kind of stood up talking to one of his coaches or whatever. But then in the second half, like once it went 2-0, he literally sat in his seat and just sat there.
His head is
we've seen various photos appear online after the game of him basically with different emotions of just pissed off and not knowing what to do, basically. He was honestly the most clueless I've seen a manager in a long time on the sidelines. And if you're a Dunfermline fan, that must be worrying to see that that's your guy that's meant to be, as I said, I think it was last week, the last podcast I said, or 2 weeks ago, Dunfermline are in a position right now that they need to bin whatever plan they've got, other than they need to get points. At this point, you can, like, folk that I seen, there was some Rovers, not loads, but there was some Rovers fans still going on about how we weren't playing great football. But at the end of the day, we won the game. We got 3 points. What else do you want? Like, I don't get why there's so many people right now that are worried about the way we're playing. As long as we're winning games right now, that's the main thing. So whereas
I think that's
Dunfermline need to be getting points and they're not doing it. I'm happy about that, but at the same time, if you had a Dunfermline fan, you'd be going, what is this manager going to do to change it? Because he looks like he's not got a clue.
See, I agree with you. From like a football fan's point of view, I was annoyed watching them on Friday night.
Yeah.
Like that would just wind me up so much. Some of the stuff that they were doing and some of the stuff he's been saying as well. Like, you kind of keep coming out and being like, I've told them, I keep telling them, it's your job. Sorry, Blair, in you come.
No, I was just going to, it's exactly that point though. Like, so there has been a bit of criticism of Robson coming in and his interviews and picking the same team and no scoring enough goals and all the rest of it. And I get all of that criticism, but I kind of feel like this season's at a point where, like Scott says, it doesn't matter anymore. None of it matters anymore. We just need to get enough points on the board to ensure that we're still here next season, and potentially even sneak into fourth would be lovely, but it's not the be all and end all. Like, we just need to get points on the board, which is exactly what Dunfermline need to do. And I feel like the whole Tidser and Robson situation is they are literally juxtaposed to each other, because it's like Robson's come in and he's just keeping it really simple. This is our game plan. This is what we are going to do, and it works best with the starting 11 that he's basically got. There's a couple of players who can come in and have been injured or whatever, and he's got his preferred options and he's got his preferred substitutes, and he's not using the bench as much as a lot of Rovers fans are comfortable with and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And I get all of that, but there's a game plan, and it's kind of, it's almost like back to basics. I go back to when Neil Collins was in charge, and we got to this stage where we would set up in the first half, and if we were rotten, he would change it in the second half. And then if we were good, he would start the next game in the same way that he finished the last one until we were rotten, and then he would change it at half time. And then if that worked, he would start the next game. And it was like, what's the plan here? Like, how do we play? And I feel like that's the one thing, whether it's sheer bloody-mindedness or by design, it's in the situation we're in, consistency is important. Like, having those Rovers players go out on every game, they know what's expected of them. They know the positions they're playing. They know who's around them. They know what they're doing. And it's like Tidser's so overcomplicated everything, and they've got this philosophy that he wants to impose. That's what you do in the summer, mate, when you've had a window and you've brought in the players you want to bring in and you implement that style. You can't do that and survive relegation all at the same time with a bunch of teenagers that have come up from down south that have no idea what they're doing up here. It's just, the whole thing's a mess. And I've said it before, I've used the word 4 or 5 times already tonight. Fucking glorious.
I think that, again, I was one that was quite intrigued by Tidser as a possibility for us when we were sort of looking for a manager, so I hope my hands up there. But I think as well, by the same token, that you've got John Gilhoun, the ex-Hearts player, who infamously touting Ketan McQuana to Cali Thistle. He's got some form of agency, and it seems to tie in with him that they're sort of brokering a lot of these deals. It's a bit like the Norm MacDonald sketch about, like, I know I said this in our chat before, but it's like all of the stars. We've got, what is it? Tashan Oakley Booth. We've got, and you just go through the names, and it's just these names that you've never heard of. Just littered off. Owen Hampson, Ephraim Yeboah, what's the other one? Just going through, and you're like,
Archie Stevens.
Yeah, Archie Stevens. And you're just a bit like, right, okay.
Because that's
you
like...
can, I'm just going to say, you can AI yourself into oblivion, effectively. You can sort of look at all the data, you can take all the information, and I know that, look, Moneyball's a great film, a great book, I'm sure, as well. But at the same time, it's had its arse kicked out of it so much. Nobody's taken the value of, like, okay, young Scottish players that have experienced seasons within the league. You look at players that are coming out of their comfort zone. So a lot of these younger guys coming up from down south that have maybe not kicked a ball professionally in an actual league. We're not talking about like the what is it, Papa John's Trophy or whatever it is down south. And then there's a reason you see clubs like, there was a huge difference between Queen's Park last season and Cali Thistle last season. And that Queen's Park got rid of development. They brought in Callum Davidson, a very pragmatic manager, who then signs
back to basics.
Welsh, and he signs Sheridan, guys that have been about the block, know what they're doing, and stuck to a rigid structure and just got the best out of their side. Whereas Cali were just like, well, we'll just keep bringing in centre backs and it'll be fine. And that's what Dunfermline are doing. There's not any sort of, it's almost like a death by sort of like philosophy, and I'm sure the AI side of it, or the sort of statistical analysis side of it's probably not as big as it's made out to be. But for whatever reason, they're sticking with it, and it's hilarious. It's great to watch.
I'm not sold on this data approach, I have to tell you, in the sense of, like, we've got the best, like, you can hear it in, like, Donald Trump's voice. Like, we've got the best data. The data's amazing. Beautiful data. We've got the best data. And it just happens to be that the players at highlights are really cheap and available from clubs down south and are happy to give them to us.
Yeah.
Like, that's handy. That's really good. I mean, Duncan Ferguson must have had the same brilliant data last season. We did exactly the same thing and get relegated.
With the same
Like,
centre
some of the
back,
same
Jeremiah
players.
Chilico-Mohan.
Like,
I've said that before as well. I don't think that this data is going to ever calculate how mental the Scottish fucking Championship is.
Yeah,
It's like I think it probably does have a purpose at the Premier League level down south.
I actually don't think it does.
But I don't.
I think
it clearly does, because look at Brighton. Brighton won Nape Day in League One.
Yeah, Brentford.
Back in the day, they're now challenging constantly for Europe every season because they're going out and loaning these players out to Belgium to develop them. Then they're coming back. They're signing players to like Argentina that nobody cares about for $1 million and selling them for 100.
But that's the thing is, they've got the whole world as their market. Ostensibly, they can buy any player in the world who's valued at less than about 10 million quid. So what they're doing is finding the 0.0001% of them who are like massively undervalued. So effectively, they should sell for 5, but their club will sell them for 1. So that's where you can find that edge. And it works because you have the whole world to play with. But when you're Dunfermline, and the number of players who will come to you, first of all, just take that with no other qualifiers. The number of players who will come to you, comparatively, is minuscule. And then within that small pool, you're trying to find the ones who are really undervalued. But it's, like Robbie mentioned, Moneyball. Like, the whole thing with Moneyball is they basically find one thing that can tell you if a baseball player is going to be good for you. It would be like the equivalent of if you just found out that actually, you know what, if a football player's pass completion percentage, that's all you need to worry about. So then you just find guys who are overweight or who are too short, but that percentage is high enough. It doesn't work to football. It doesn't apply. Yeah. It's not like a one-action thing. And to think that you can do it, well, see if you can do it. You're not doing it at Dunfermline.
Yeah.
No.
If you've got a computer in your office that tells you football players that are better than other football players, that's an incredibly valuable thing to have. Why are you on Halbeath Road with it?
Yeah. We had this exact conversation on Friday. Baseball, when you boil it down, is a game of effectively 1v1. Or as the game breaks out, it's a bunch of guys who have one job to do. And if you can get a guy in that position who can do that one job really, really well, great. But Josh Mullen can cross a ball. It doesn't make him a right back. Like, and it's that thing of it doesn't matter how good you are at one thing. There are 15 things you need to be able to do to be effective. I just don't think it works in football, period. The Brighton thing's slightly different in the sense that they can just buy players relatively cheap, put them in the biggest shop window in the world, and some idiot will buy them for 75 million. Like, that will happen.
Yeah. Like, football's such a meritocracy. Like, if you're good, you will go up. And if you're bad, you will drop down. And it's so fluid because so many people play the game in so many countries. Like, you're not going to get, again, like the whole thing with Moneyball is like there's people who throw the ball funny and they don't get a move up the way because they throw the ball funny. But there's only one MLB, there's only one major league to go to.
Yeah.
So they sit in the level below it and don't get called up. That doesn't happen in football. Like, you could be a guy who runs funny, but if you have 2 good seasons, a team in the division above will pick you up.
So
and
you look at
just like it's such a, and now listen, like over the long term, right? Maybe they do have an edge somehow, but to think you could do it in a single window, and the fact that it looks exactly the same as what any other idiot would do, where like it's naive and almost bordering on like disrespectful, I think, to the level of football that we're at, because it was the same when Duncan Ferguson did it, where he basically rocked up and was like, well, this football team's in trouble. Right, tell you what we're going to do. We're going to get Premier League 2. It's a stupid name for a league anyway. Going to get a load of kids for there who, as I said, are free. That's how good they are. We're going to get them to come up and they are going to knock this out of the park. We're going to stroll it through, probably make promotion playoffs. And then they get scudded every single week because that's an easy solution. See if the solution to doing well in the Scottish Championship was getting a load of players on loan from the under-23 league down south. We would just all do it and it would be fine. But we don't, because it's not a good solution. You can pick up maybe 1 or 2 if you do really well. You can't pick up 7, 8 or 9, parachute them into a team that's in a relegation battle, and then be like, right, okay, teenagers who've been coddled for the last 5 years in an academy system and who are going back there next year regardless of what happens, can you dig us out of this hole against these guys who are playing for their careers, please? No, you can't.
I just hope they double down on it in the summer and try it in League One next season, because they'll all just get booted off the park. It'll be hilarious.
I had completely, just when Robbie was talking earlier on, and I've just gone down a little dark hole on the internet, because I did not twig that he played for Inverness last season.
Yeah,
that passed me by completely.
Jeremiah Chillicothe-Millen.
Oh, yeah.
But if you look at the I know so much is made of Oakley Booth, and he played for the 2017 World Cup winner. Again, some of the names in there: Mark Guehi, Stephen Sehignon, Morgan Gibbs-White, Conor Gallagher, Ryan Brewster, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Phil Foden. He started with most of them. But there's a reason, as you said, I know that you touched on it earlier on, but just to double down on it, there's a reason that he's 25 and not at that level, because he's not that good. He's nowhere near the level. And again, you can apply it to a lot of these guys that came over, and the Lachie Boa. I think in particular for him, he's moved up from Bristol as a part of a duo from them. He's got the fans, and the fans are literally saying he looks like he's a charity game player. He's that bad. He's just not at the level that they need. That's got to be in his head. He's a kid that's came up from Bristol. He's moved away from his family, and then you're getting comments like that. And I'm sure that there's got to be members of that squad. You're 19, 20. You're coming up to play for Dunfermline, your first senior club in a decent level of football. You're going on Twitter and you see all these comments of people saying, don't bother playing him or I'll not be back, etc. Or just not fit to wear the shirt. That's got to be in your head. You're got to be thinking, I just can't really be harsh for this. It's not going to make a difference when I go back down the road. Loving it. Absolutely loving it.
And that, again, that's why you can do it with one. You can bring in one guy like that and be like, he's really decent. But what they've done is shipped out some guys who were already there, who know the course. And they've brought in too many of these other guys. And as I say, now it's at the point where, on the evidence of Friday night, they're actually now dragging down guys like David Witherspoon, who he should be in that category of a guy you would want to bring in for a relegation fight. Obviously, he was already there.
You imagine if they took him and Kane out of that team. Oh my God.
As Scott mentioned before, Kane wasn't even getting to do any of this stuff. He's actually good at it.
Wasn't.
He's the only player that's scored for them, isn't he? Since
he's the only player who scored from the last 10 games. So
what happened to the boy Fogarty? He seemed to be. Yeah, but I was just having a wee look there. So the last game he played was the 3-1 game against us, where he played 90 minutes. Having played 90 minutes in the 6 games before that, he has then played 9 minutes since then from the bench. He's been on the bench every week, so I'm presuming he's not injured.
Because that was the big thing.
Again, why is he not playing left back if worst comes to worst?
The boy's face was hanging off, and they were trying to sellotape it back on. There was a lot of outcry, I think, from their end, saying, just put Fogarty on. He's fine.
Mental.
He's played at this level already. He's not a world beater, but he's fine. And instead they wasted a whole lot of time to try and keep that boy in the park. Right, well, we'll talk about the goal. Because
I'm quite enjoying this, I have to say.
It occurred 22 minutes into the game, and we are 38 minutes into the podcast. I thought the goal was a very good example of what the Rovers were doing very well. They're all over Dunfermline in the middle of the park. Again, Barry Robson mentions this in his interview. That was very much the plan. As soon as they play a pass out of their defence, you're just on them. And it is very scrappy, but it's very scrappy because a Rovers player is there every single time the ball looks like springing loose. And when it does eventually spring loose to Dylan Easton, it's a brilliant pass through. And then Finlay Pollock, last 2 games, he's put a 1-on-1 straight into the goalkeeper and just makes no mistake this time. Nice big
see how I
touch
had a
wide.
complete nuke about saying that we should have got Tidser in. I'm saying this now. I did mention post-match against Livingston. If he does it against the Pars, has his Cody David moment, we'll accept that. So
yeah, and to be fair, he absolutely did made the right choice. The big thing for me with this was when the ball was knocked through and I realised it was Kyle Benedictus who was chasing back.
Yeah,
It's like,
it
oh,
was
it could
great.
be in here. Like, I think we've all been big fans of Kyle Benedictus at one time or another, but he's not a guy you want, facing his own goal, chasing back. Scott, give me your thoughts on the goal in general, but also, do you think the keeper's got a question to answer here about his role in this?
Yeah, I was actually, it was one of the things that I was going to mention about the goal was, I think the difference with Pollock compared to the chances he's missed against Livy and, was it Hamilton? He missed
Queen's
the
Park.
other one? Queen's Park.
Queen's Park.
They two games, the goalies made a slightly later decision to come out and sort of stop him. Oluwayemi, I've never seen a keeper decide straight away so quickly, I am coming out for this. Whether he also knows that Benedictus ain't catching him straight away is another thing that maybe he's thought about, but I think that's actually just made Pollock's decision so easy to go, well, if I can't, I'm just knocking this round him, and then I've got the pace to keep in front of Benedictus and just slot it into the net. And I think he's completely decided to do the right thing because, as you say, there's even the couple of times he has missed one-on-ones where you go, surely he could, because his first ever goal for us was in the first, 10, 15 minutes of playing for the Rovers when he came on for Lewis Vaughan against Hamilton and he rounded the goal and you're going, oh, if he can be doing stuff like this, he's going to be brilliant. And every time he's been one-on-one, you just think, as I say, it's almost like he's had too much time to think about it and worried about what he's going to do. Whereas I think, surely you just, with your pace, you can go around pretty much any goalkeeper and you're going to catch the ball before it goes out to slot into the net. But I think, yeah, he done exactly the right thing. But Dylan Easton's pass as well was just sensational. I mean, I don't think, I'm comfortable to say, I don't think there's many folk in this division that would have either A, tried it, or B, pulled it off. Like, I think it's the fact that you can do that, but he's also got it perfect weight, perfect accuracy for Pollock to run onto it. Like, he could have easily done it and it's gone miles in front of him and the goalie comes and gets it at the edge of the box or whatever. But it's just, honestly, it was just, it was perfect. And I think more than anything, I was actually happy for Finlay Pollock because, again, there was a lot of people, including myself, was starting to think this guy's just no cutting it in terms of being a striker because he's not scoring enough goals with the chances he's getting. At the end of the day, I think managers will tell you, I'm glad he's getting into these areas to make the chances, but now he's actually taking his chance. So fair play to him, and it gave us that sort of jump in the game to then go, well, now Dunfermline need to do something because they hadn't done anything till then, and obviously they did nothing afterwards. But they had to answer the question, and they never.
Definitely, Allan. What did you?
Yeah, see, I mean, the ball for Easton was just incredible. And like you say, when you're Finlay Pollock's going one-on-one with Benedictus, there's only one winner. In terms of the goalie, I think it's actually quite. It's funny that, Scott mentioned that he comes out really early. I've never seen a goalie who actually keeps such a high position on the. He's always really kind of high up the pitch, and if he'd actually been standing where he normally does, he probably gets it. But he was actually his starting position was just a wee bit deeper than he normally is, and that's what gives Pollock the time to come. And as Scott says, because he's already coming, it makes the decision a lot easier. You go around him. As long as the keeper misses the ball, if you didn't get around him, chances are he's clattering into you, and he's maybe going off the pitch anyway. So it was definitely the right call, and it was a really nice finish. And I love the fact that Benny slid in for it as well because it gave us another sliding into Sunday or sliding into the weekend in this one. Just absolutely glorious. And
not a million miles away from it, Benedict.
We all said beforehand that the first goal was vitally important. Like, Les gave us some stats about the last time we won having gone behind a game, and it's quite sobering. So, it was really important, I think, to get the first goal, and it was complete easy street from that point on, I think.
thing with the goalkeeper for me is none of the angles on the Rovers highlights, I didn't go back to watch the BBC ones, quite show you him sort of throughout. Because where Pollock takes his first touch, he's only maybe 22 yards out. As you say, Allan, the goalkeeper tends to hold quite a high line. He's obviously not then. But then, Scott, as you say, he's rushing out at full pace by the time Pollock gets there. And I don't quite... I'm assuming he must have sort of delayed a lot of this. That was my impression at the time. You can't quite see it on the highlights, but it's not... You know, Pollock's relatively close to the goal when he takes his first touch. And, I mean, it really is a case, especially with hindsight. We never look back after that point. But there was just, at no point did they look like they were going to come back to that at all.
Just to come in there, I would want to give a lot more credit in terms of Pollock just for I think it's one of these ones that probably looks very easy when you're watching it back as a fan. But to be able to sort of make sure that, because the way that he's coming with the ball, he's sort of heading wide. So he takes it wide past the keeper. He's got to find it so that he doesn't, because obviously you think before he's missed those 2 1-on-1s, so that's probably going to be in the back of his head somewhere. So the one I think of is Fernando Torres when he just signed for Chelsea, playing against Man United, and he rounded the keeper and then shanked it wide. That's the type of thing that you can sort of see in a situation with players where they're just under that pressure to get their first, a goal basically. Pollock does really well because he doesn't hit it hard, he doesn't sort of snatch at it or do anything drastic. He just slots it home nicely as well. The second person I would pay a lot of credit to is actually Paul Hanlon for the initial tackle that kind of gets the ball to Easton, because he doesn't hold any prisoners or take any prisoners as such. Just straight in, full-blooded. I don't know, I think it was against Stevens or Witherspoon or one of the two, but he just absolutely melts him to win the ball. It's a great viewing.
The other thing is, it's very easy to forget Pollock's not a striker at trade either.
Yeah.
You know, that if that was, any number of a, whole battalion of wingers we've had over the years, you'd be raving about that kind of run and finish. And it's easy to forget that just because we've been playing him up front for the last 6-7 weeks. That's not really his position. It's a very, very impressive, but a kind of striking play. Then the kind of final thing I've got in my notes for the first half, because to be fair, this was not a game full of incident, is that the injury, the kind of dunt in the face that Chillico and Mullen takes. Blair, if that was a Rovers player, if that was a Rovers incident, would you just get him subbed, get back going again? Would that wind you up watching them take 5 minutes to try and duct tape his face back on?
Yeah, it really did. And the fact that he came back on and then had to go off again, and then actually early in the second half was wiping blood off his face, and the ref never spotted it. Because he was bleeding again just early into the second half. It was really frustrating, and it was one of them, like, the fans obviously got a bit annoyed. He got a bit of rough treatment, I thought, off the fans in the first place. He literally got kicked in the face. It wasn't deliberate at all, but he kind of went down, tangled up with Finlay Pollock, and had taken a boot kind of inadvertently to the face. It hurts. Like, if you've ever been kicked in the face, it ain't pleasant. So, yeah, he goes down injured or whatever, and then goes off to get the treatment. And then obviously Chris Hamilton does what Chris Hamilton does, and what, I'll be honest, if it was the other way around, exactly what I would want Ross Matthews to do. We complain about it all the time, that we don't manage the game well enough. I think actually that's the one bit of credit I would give Dunfermline, is they slowed the game down so much at that point, that there was so little play while he was actually off injured, that it probably didn't impact as much as it could have done in that amount of time. And the fact that Hamilton's there to drop into centre half as well obviously means that it's not kind of the end of the world. They didn't lose another goal or anything like that, but it did. It went on a long time. And do you know what? I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I don't watch Dunfermline games unless they're playing us. Maybe he has been really good. Maybe he is worth the wait. But as I've already said, I didn't see enough to think it was merited. But Yeah, just, I don't know, it was a funny old game. Like you say, we got one in front and we just cruised.
It was also funny at that point when he was off getting treatment when, I don't know if it was Comrie, all of a sudden, oh look, his boots come off, he's going to have to tie his lace, and the referee made him go off as well.
Yeah.
So they were playing with 9 men. I was like, that's brilliant. And didn't
I don't know
let
if
him come right back on either.
Maybe it's just a stick to beat their manager with, and he's, getting an awful lot of flack as it was. But that is just another thing that when you're already kind of under fire, it seems like a risky thing to do. You think, you've got subs, stick them on. But as you say, even after half time, he still seemed like, I'm not entirely convinced this is your best shot. Like, even if he is a very good defender, like, is he still a very good defender when he can only see out of one eye and his nose is all plugged up and everything? It just seemed like a big decision, but probably not the worst call we made all night, to be fair. Right, I think that basically takes us up to half time. So let's us have a quick break as well, and then we'll come back and we'll run through the second half. Blair.
Yes, mate.
You're a man.
Yes.
And you have thoughts and feelings and emotions.
Yes.
Are you good at talking about all that stuff?
Well, I try my best, but I don't know. Probably not as much as I should.
I'm the same. I feel better after getting stuff like that off my chest, but I don't do it anywhere near often enough. Have you heard about Andy's Man Club?
They're brilliant. They create a safe space for men to sit down and talk about the important stuff. And they do it right across the country as well.
Yeah, exactly. They've got more than 200 meetings across the UK, and it's every Monday night at 7 o'clock, including one at Starks Park.
And if anyone wants more information on it, they can go to andysmanclub.co.uk or search for Andy's Man Club on Facebook. It's okay to talk, and now we're going to get back to talking about the Rovers.
It's the second half, to be fair, kind of more of the same, really. Certainly from where I was sitting, I don't think there was ever really a kind of shift in the game. They did have a shot-ish in the kind of opening few minutes. Our old friend Tashan Oakley Booth, the solicitor, I think, is it possibly a deflected shot kind of sneaks its way through to Josh Ray, about as kind of good as it gets for them. But then 10 minutes after half time, we get the second goal, which really put the game to bed. Now, before we get to the goal itself, I want to talk about the foul and the free kick that leads to it, because there's kind of two things on this for me. One of them is, well, first of all, I was quite prepared before I watched the highlights to be quite charitable with that, because at the time I thought it was quite harsh, given how obvious it was that Witherspoon had won the ball. But having seen it back, the referee's absolutely right. It's too much force, and he catches too much of the man. To use an old, well-worn cliche, like 20 years ago, that's a great tackle, but at any point in the last 15, you're losing a foul for that. So that's one thing. But the other thing, and again, I'm mostly just talking about Dunfermline's failings because it amuses me. Finlay Pollock has the ball on the right wing for the Rovers, and he is being tracked by Chris Kane. Why? How's that happened? Like, Witherspoon has to dive in and make the challenge because Kane's the one who's holding him up. Like, those are the only two guys in this team who could score a goal. Why are they having to play? And I think, now, to answer my own question, I think in large part is because Otto has had to go charging out from left back. He's the only one who can create anything for them. But I really, if you're looking for signs that your afternoon or your evening is not going well, that the only boy that can score a goal for you is try to hud up the other team's striker on the wing, and your most creative players having to try and smash into him to win the ball back. But then the ball is whipped in. It's another, as you said at the beginning, Alan, another really, really good free kick from Jamie Gullen. And if this was a goal that the Rovers had conceded, I think there would be a collective doing of dingers. And Les would have XL fired up in jig time. Robbie, from your perspective, Well, feel free to say anything good you want about the Rovers, first of all. But if anything, to be honest, I'm in the kind of mood. I'm more inclined to hear your thoughts on who is more to blame for that. Is it Lewis McCann or is it Oyemi in the goal?
I'll not be rude. I'll answer your question at the end there first time and give Dunfermline a body in. Lewis McCann is, from the looks of things, completely to blame for that. Just completely unaware that Paul Hanlon... again, we've spoken about this type of goal before, with Henderson against Scott Brown, and then we had one sort of a few weeks later, I think, which was exactly the same thing, where effectively just a player coasting in gleefully behind a defender to be able to finish. And yeah, for whatever reason, I believe the word Ian Latto used in the group chat was the temerity to slaughter Oyemi for his mistake of not coming for the ball. That's your defensive duty all day long. But yeah, it's great for Paul Hanlon to get his first goal. Still one of those ones where, yeah, I don't know what Paul Hanlon really needs to do to get a Man of the Match award, because he was such a big influence in the game, and yet still, after getting his first goal, didn't manage to get one. But overall, yeah, very, very good delivery. Just good awareness to come in and just be able to smash that home, shall we say. And really killed off the game at that point, other than a sort of small flurry of chances for Dunfermline after, which were sort of more half chances anyway, and Nugent Murray was not letting anything go. He was in one of those moods, which you love to see. The game was over. And I did enjoy the miniature exodus at that point in the away end. There's some people just... I'd imagine there was a collective switch off on BBC Scotland as well, judging by that away end. There's probably quite a few people that decided to just tune in rather than give us the money to watch their team get scalped. Yeah. Shame on you. But yes, there was a small miniature exodus. I did get a link sent to me about a Dunfermline fan who travelled up from Doncaster to watch that with his wife, who at that point got up and left. So,
got to be traffic, eh?
To be fair, I thought the 92 was closed at kick-off because it was absolutely empty in the other end.
That was bad, aye.
But again, hard to blame them. Having now actually watched them, right, okay, aye. I can
the
see
Denny's
why.
actually managed to catch, I think it's like the third highlight of the goal that Hanlon scores, when it's like behind the goal and it's kind of looking towards Hanlon. Have you seen Kyle Benedicta's reaction to Lewis McCann? He's just basically mouthing, "Why are you not heading the ball? You need to header the ball." It's like explaining to a kid like what he needs to do at any point. He's just like, and the goalie has gone literally square. I thought they were going to end up hitting each other at one point. They were basically square go, like right up until I think somebody did try to kind of pull them apart a wee bit, because at the end of the day they've got to try and get back into the game. But Benedicta's reaction, I thought, was pretty funny.
He's a really funny one.
Big bit of credit has to go to Jamie Gunn, because the ball is in such a good area. It's really hard to defend. Mm-hmm. You know, your defenders are thinking, right, the keeper should come for that. The keeper's thinking, oh, that's bending out. I can't go for that because if I miss it, it's an open goal. It's the quality of the ball causes the confusion.
It's the pace on the ball.
Brilliant.
The pace that he puts on a cross ball. We've not had anybody doing that for a long time. Like all these floaty, pishy clip things that we do. And it's just like centre halves and goalkeepers dealing with it left, right and centre. To have free kicks coming into the box and corners coming into the box, that if you win the header, you don't have to do a lot of work. You just have to direct. There's enough pace on the ball. Like, makes such a difference. I was going to say, though, McCann, I know that the Pars fans hate him. Like, they give him absolute dogs.
Really run out of patience with him.
I kind of feel sorry for him in the sense that he looks like, and bear with me for a second, because he looks like a player who's never been coached. Like, he's got all the attributes. He is an absolute specimen. He looks like a flipping gladiator or something. He's massive. He does, though, and he's got that kind of, like, almost like Haaland-like physique, like that big, stocky, strong figure of him. And he's decent in the air, he's quick, he's relatively good with both feet. I'm like, how is he so shit? I don't understand how it works. Because and I genuinely think, see, if you look at what Robson's done with Pollock,
Yeah.
and I kind of think it's almost that thing of, see, if you gave McCann to a decent coach, I'm not even saying a decent manager, but a genuinely decent coach who could coach him into playing football, he'd be an absolute weapon.
For seasons as well, he's been playing out on that left-hand side, and whilst he probably is decent at coming off the wing and cutting inside and getting shots away and whatever, and we have seen, I think it was the cup game at the start of last season where he did cut in and scored against us in the League Cup game, and it was a really well taken goal.
Yeah,
I don't think he is a winger. He's somebody that needs to be playing number 9, and he just, for whatever reason, under the last 2-3 managers, he has not been playing in the position. I think
they're all pish managers.
As I say, I don't watch them every week. I just think somebody surely has to look at him and go, nah, he's a number 9 that we get guys in and around playing off it, but he just hasn't been playing there.
At risk of getting pelters, I'd be delighted to have him in.
He's too physical almost, in the sense that managers are convinced that they're playing him out wide.
Yeah.
So, it's good to have somebody that big in a team. Whereas if he was maybe actually a wee bit skinnier, he probably would have had to drop down a level. But maybe he would have actually had a run of games playing at centre forward and could have worked his way up. But I have to say, like, on a general level, maybe. But for that goal, that is criminal. Absolutely criminal. Even, like, watching it back, Paul Hanlon's not favourite to win that ball, pretty much until he actually has already won it. Like, it's different if it comes in at head height even. And you go, well, listen, Paul Hanlon's incredible in the air, so he's beating you to it. It's basically at waist height and he's just stabbing it through. And McCann, he's only got his eyes on the ball, to the lack of any awareness whatsoever, to the point when he's shouting at the keeper. He hasn't got a clue where the keeper is. He just looks, knows the ball is in the net, and is like, oh, you weren't here. Because he had no idea whether the keeper was going to be there or not. And he runs and then slows as the ball's coming in. Even if he just continues at the same pace, he'll at least get in the way of that. That's, as Ian said, the temerity to blame the goalkeeper for that is outrageous.
It is wild.
Aye. And again, these are kind of things that don't go for you when you're doing badly, but that is actively bad being a football player from Lewis McCann there. And again, I think he should be fine. He should be a guy who you look at and go, yeah, your average position should be like playing for a team that finishes like 6th or 7th in the championship. But he hasn't actually shown that for a long time.
Can you imagine if likes of John McGlynn had him? Like, and actually work, but somebody that worked with him and actually sculpted him as some kind of player. I don't know.
Because he was with Fife Elite and he played a few trial games with us, didn't he? Like when I think it was Barry Smith was our manager at the time. Because he played and scored against Dunfermline, I think, in a friendly. We played at Bayview when we were getting our pitch down. But yeah, just it looks like very much like one of those ones where just the guy's confidence is gone, just where over the years it's completely eroded, and maybe it's one where he needs to move on to a new club with a fan base that's going to be completely fresh with him. You can see him doing fine elsewhere, and almost like how Kevin Nisbet with Partick Thistle. And
we'll see how he gets on in League One next year.
True.
I was going to say, I know we're into the second half, but I did quite enjoy somebody on Twitter was going on about how when Tidser didn't do his post-match interview, that he also never went and clapped the fans. That would be the fans in the first half who were booing the team and singing Tidser, Tidser, get to fuck in the first half at 1-0. I'm like, come on now. Come on.
It was, I think, again, that's another one where I think you're on a hiding to nothing there. Like, you can't win. Because if he goes, they're just shouting abuse at him, and that, fair enough. And if he doesn't go, he gets stick for that as well. Like, you can't win. But he was like straight down the tunnel. And
you could see
he had a sore throat. Leave him alone.
He was away for a strepsil.
See if it was like, you talk about, like, you see in English football, like, you've got Carlisle can go all the way down to like Plymouth or something, like in the leagues eventually at some point. I can understand why you would want it maybe for like the amount of travel you've done and your team hasn't performed right. It's a little thing, but it's like something. Whereas it's just along the road. Like it's not like they've travelled miles to get there.
Most of them
It's
never
like,
turned up.
Yeah.
Well, that was it. I thought when the players were going to die, I was like, there's nobody left.
Yeah.
There's no Dunfermline fans there.
You could the ones that were there though. It was very funny to see. It's a bit. There was a viral sort of viral key clip that went doing the rounds recently of I believe Spartans down in England, where they had a fan that was basically saying, "I've spent 200 quid to go here. My son's 26. He's away playing fucking golf." Like just this whole like tirade that was respectfully done, but still just basically saying to players like, "We shouldn't be having to put up with this. Like we know that you're trying hard, but you need to do better, etc., etc." You just saw one Dunfermline fan down the front. This was right as Allan hit that play button on Spotify for a certain Ian Curtis, Pete Hook, Bernard Sumner, Joy at the end. He was just basically with his hands out, screaming at them. Oh,
I have to say, actually, talking about that, it was I was glad because people like status quo when we win, so I thought I'll oblige with that. But I love the fact that Dunfermline went to their fans because it let me have a couple of minutes of quo, and then just as they were coming down to the tunnel, I was like, right, Joy Division's coming on now because it was just perfect time. It was
well played, mate. Very well played.
Just before we came on to start recording, so I don't know if you'll have seen it. The Rovers put up one of the wee kind of mini, like 2-minute kind of inside match day things,
that, yeah.
And they've just isolated one little line of that right at the end as the kind of commentary dies away. It's very good.
I think they've
very
got
well
it. We've got it when Pollock's up doing his interview in it, so you can see his back and that's playing.
But it's such a good thing because it's such a distinctive intro. Like you get the guitar and then the drums come in and then the bass is added in from Pete Hook as well. I turned and like just said like straight away to them, he's done it. And, like the people around me, I was like, he's gone. And then as soon as people like, I started off singing it well before, but then like people clicked into it and they're like, that's where that song's from. And it's just like, it just felt the whole stand giving it. It's beautiful.
Right, I've got two other things in my notes for the actual game itself, and then I want to get stuck into Kevin McDonald a wee bit.
And Chris Hamilton.
There is, and Chris Hamilton. There's a big block from Ewan Murray. Because of course there is.
Beautiful.
It's saying there's a slam dunk from Michael Jordan.
Just wasn't it his face this time?
That's what he does. But that's about as close as they get.
That was the one that BBC were speculating might have been a penalty. Because he's follow through. They had a big debate about whether his tackle was the same as Witherspoon's because he followed through on Chris Hamilton, and they were saying, if one's given, maybe the other one should be given. Is it a penalty? I'm like, I'm sorry, if Chris Hamilton's no claiming for a penalty there, it's absolutely not a penalty. Enough.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know what I mean? It's just
never
occurred to me either. It was only when I heard it back in the BBC afterwards. I'm like, really? What?
It's the first tackle I've heard the Rovers fan base celebrate since Ross Millen's slide tackle at Tannadice. Like, it was celebrated almost like a goal. Like, that's how much it was celebrated. Just because he's absolutely flung himself in front of it. And it's the sort of things you just love to see. And he's probably, like, the one guy that you would expect to do that, like, out of the whole squad. That when he's on form and when he's trying to just do anything for the cause, that's what he does. And that's why... Yeah, he's maybe not had the best season for us this season, but that's the sort of stuff that you have Ewan Murray in your team for.
Aye, definitely. See, the other thing I've got noted down here, Blair, is it churlish to complain about a lack of substitutes or a late use of substitutes after a 2-0 win?
I was doing it, to be fair. I have to say, and I think I'm on record as being quite kind of supportive of Barry Robson and his lack of use of the bench at times. But there was a bit of me, I got a bit frustrated with the timing of the substitutes in the sense that as soon as we went 2-0 up, they went long. They were just kind of tubing it long or whatever. And they were starting to they weren't getting joy out of it as such, but they were looking a little bit more. That was probably the best that they played in that game. It was the most that they were kind of threatening us. And I thought, if they score, the game turns at 2-1, 5-10 minutes to go. You know, you've got backs of the wall. We get deeper and deeper. They push on. It's written in the stars. They get a corner, and you know, like Paul Hanlon headers into his own net or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's one of the kind of done it to ourselves moments. And I thought, make the change now. Make the change while you're on top. Make the change while it's positive, rather than waiting until we're won or lost a goal and then making a change. Obviously, it never came. So it maybe is a little bit churlish in the sense that he's a hell of a lot more qualified than I am. But yeah, I just felt we got a bit flat. I mean, he made the change at what, 71, 72, something like that.
A little bit later than that, I think.
78.
Was it?
78.
It was as late as that. Well, there you go.
They made a triple sub on the hour, and then we were a good 15, 18 minutes after that.
I'd say it wasn't like it got to an hour and I was going, oh my God, why has he not made a sub yet? Because actually we were really comfortable. But it was probably about 5, maybe 10 minutes at the most before he did make the sub, where I'd kind of turned to the boys next to me and was like, we could do a 1 or 2 here, just freshen it up a wee bit. Gullen's looking a bit leggy. You know, Pollock's run himself into the ground again. Easton's had a really good game, but again, done a lot of running. Like, maybe now's the time to make the change. But, I mean, fair play. It worked out in the end, and there's plenty of times in football where it doesn't. So you've got to give credit where it's due.
This is it. I think there's 2 angles to it. So that I was the same as you. I was thinking, like, they're not creating anything, but at the same time, we're finding it harder to keep the ball further up the park because we're not getting out as quickly, because Pollock and Gullen don't have the legs they did previously. You know, stick Marsh on for Pollock, and at least you've got a bit more running in you. But I can see the other argument being, well, if you're comfortable, you're comfortable. Why change anything? They look so unlikely to score. Why would you want to almost tempt fate by making a change? I don't necessarily agree with that, but I can see the argument. This is a secondary point, but I thought it was interesting that the first sub, it's Lewis Vaughan who comes on after 78 minutes, and he comes on for Dylan Easton rather than for either Pollock or Gullen. Alan, do you think that might be a window into how Barry Robson might want to use Lewis Vaughan, or am I reading too much into it?
I think there's probably a part of that to it. I suspect it's also just about recognising how important Dylan Easton is to us this season. There's a few games where he's been taken off earlier. You know, he's been subbed off quite a few times, and I think there's maybe just an element of we want to get minutes into Vaughan, but also let's just protect Dylan Easton a wee bit. You wonder if maybe he's still carrying that niggle with his back. He's not playing like it. You know, he looks like he's fully fit. And clearly he didn't expect to come off because he'd started jogging across the pitch, and it was only when he heard me saying his name, he turned around and he was like, oh, right, I'm off him. So
he didn't look happy, actually, I have to say.
But yeah, I mean, there might be an element of maybe, you know, Barry Robson's got an idea that Vaughan is that kind of deeper lying attacking midfielder rather than a kind of out and out strike 9 or even a 10. I don't know.
Actually, I thought it was interesting because you can certainly, again, you could make that case where, again, if you were starting from scratch and you're putting that team together, you go, well, Vaughan's got loads of quality to be in the middle, and then you get 2 guys ahead of him doing more of the running, which is how it works with Easton. That's obviously Easton's big selling point, the amount of quality he's got in there. I thought that was just an interesting little kind of aside.
A wee bit worrying though if we get to the stage where is it Easton or Vaughan? Like, because they're so good together as well. Like, and do they fit as a pair?
Well, this is again, it's the same question we've got about Aidan Connolly at the moment, where you know you make a decision. Well, Barry Robson has made a decision based on the system that he wants, and he's very rigidly, and again, 1-2-0. I'm not arguing about it this week. Very rigidly sticking to the system, and then he's putting the players in. And a guy like Aidan Connolly, who purely on quality alone merits a lot more minutes than he's had recently, but he doesn't fit into the system. And this is really just kind of the same thing. And I think like, I mean, Alan, to your point, I think what's happened there is Dylan Easton's looked up, seen it's Lewis Vaughan getting ready, and he's gone, grand. If that was Kai Montague, I'd be coming off. But it's not, so I'm fine. It'll be one of these two guys. But again, I mean, there's versatility there. Absolutely. You could have Vaughan as one of the front two and keep Easton in there. It's just a question of who's available and when, I think. And we did also get a couple of minutes from Aidan Marsh as well. Because I think Aidan Marsh, naturally, obviously, does have a place. He's either one of those front two. With Finlay Pollock missing now one of those upcoming games, we're certainly going to have to see more from either Lewis Vaughan or Aidan Marsh in one form or another. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
With the whole substitution situation, I feel like, and it's probably across the fan base, I feel like with complete disrespect to Dunfermline in every single possible way, you just felt like if we'd made changes earlier, we could have just gone out and absolutely rode them. Like, properly embarrassed and humiliated them on national TV. And that's, look, you've got to give a huge amount of credit to Allan and Pollock, because nobody worked harder than them in terms of, I would be very interested to see the running stats for the sort of game on Friday night, because nobody was outworking them up top. They were just incredible. I would have loved to have seen the subs sooner. I think it's probably the most I've ever seen sort of a fan base from a Rovers perspective. Probably speaks about the standard that we're expecting in derbies nowadays, maybe compared to, like, I know they had David McGurn on co-commentary, but like 15 years ago, you're probably going at a derby thinking, oh, this is a Dunfermline side featuring the likes of Andy Kirk. You're looking at Willie Gibson, Joe Cardle. They can go out and do damage. Nowadays, we are thinking, this is a Dunfermline team that we should be looking at and thinking, right, we can go out and do some embarrassment to them, and we can go out and humiliate them. And yeah, I feel like across the fan base, it got to that point. It got to like 70 minutes or so, and fans are sort of saying, come on, Barry, get the subs on, because we want to go out and see a Rovers side in full flow, just getting more and more goals, which I think is reasonable enough for people to say. But at the same time, that's not to say you're unhappy at being 2-0 up, because everyone was loving it.
I think that's... Had we had a few more positive results recently, maybe he goes and pushes on for that. But I think 2-0, and 2-0, I mean, not literally, obviously, as you say, Pollock and Gullen were running the ground, but like without really breaking a sweat, in the sense of we weren't under any pressure at any point. Like, that's as comfortable a 2-0 as you'll get. Certainly, I mean, beforehand, I'd have snatched a hand off for that without question. And a big part, obviously, that was I hadn't recognised just how bad Dunfermline were, but that kind of comfortable control, I'm quite happy with all day long.
I did enjoy some of the sort of pitying takes of people in the South Stand, though, that were sort of saying, I can't believe how bad they are. It's actually embarrassing for them. Lapped it up. If they do that 100 times out of 100, I'm absolutely here for it.
Love it.
Yeah, definitely.
Hope they get relegated.
Me too.
Well, on that point, Blair, I'll come to you on this. I'll try and say this without a smile on my face. Do you fear for Dunfermline's survival chances at this point?
If I was a Dunfermline fan, I'd be very afraid. Yeah, I genuinely think Airdrie will catch them. I just don't see. And do you know what? It's maybe unfair because we're taking it as a single game, but obviously you've got to listen to what their fans are saying and stuff as well, like about how bad they've been. Because if you'd watched us against Queen's Park, you'd say probably exactly the same thing about us. Like you'd fear for our safety and all the rest of it, blah blah blah. But I just don't see where the points come from. They've got a stinking run coming up as well. Like in terms of games, I just think like they're at a stage where what are they now? 7 points? No, six. 6 points ahead of Airdrie. And it's awfully close. And they've still got to play each other.
Second last day at Easton Park.
Second last day of the season. Oh my God. Like, they genuinely should be worried. And I think it was actually just the group chat today, I think it might have even been you that said it, Duncan, about like the gulf between the Championship and League One this year feels like whoever ends up in the playoffs should probably be favourites for winning the playoffs, because there's not really that kind of strength in the teams in League One. But at the same time, the point you made about would you fancy the Pars over 2 legs against anybody?
No.
But
I think if Airdrie get to
11th,
ninth, I think if Airdrie get to 9th, I think they'll win the playoff. I think they'll stay up because they're on the right form.
Yeah.
I think if Dunfermline finish 9th, I think any of the teams that are going to be in the playoffs there would take them in the semi-final over 2 legs, just because of the way they're playing just now.
I think the thing with Airdrie is, if Airdrie can catch Dunfermline, they can catch Hamilton as well. But I think there's only a point difference between those two. And like, again, on recent evidence, Hamilton are also very, very bad. Like, Airdrie, who looked completely dead and buried, have got a real chance. And that, as you say, that head-to-head at Easton Park is going to be massive. Because you're really talking about, whatever it is, 4 or 5 games between then and now. Can Airdrie pick up 3 points over?
Does that include one where Dunfermline play Accies as well? So the one team's taking points off each other.
Points off the table. Because if you say to me now, right, can Airdrie pick up 3 more points than Dunfermline between now and the second last day? I would say definitely. And then you got the case where Airdrie are going to East End Park to draw level, and you're asking that mob that we saw on Friday night to dig in. I don't know, man. I'm looking forward to watching.
And then, last game of the season, Airdrie are at home to Ayr, who are going to be completely deflated after bottling the league, and Dunfermline go to Morton, who might be fighting for a playoff place. So,
that's the thing. These games at the end of the season, it's going to be interesting because, like, as you say, like Ayr could be done and ready for the playoffs and whatever by the time they've got to play Airdrie. So if Airdrie need to win that, you would go, they should win that, because Ayr really will probably be wanting to rotate their team and whatever to make sure they're not picking up injuries to their key players. And then you've got Dunfermline going to Morton.
Choice goalie.
Dunfermline going to Morton. Again, Morton's season could be done by then. They could be mid-table, not really competing for anything. And then you've got Hamilton have got to go to Falkirk, where they're probably lifting a trophy, celebrating, and again, no giving a care in the world. So you could have 3 games where they all end up winning just because the team they're playing against have nothing to play for, and that might just actually no help somebody that's in 10th or 9th at that time going, oh well, all our the teams around us are all playing teams that didn't have anything to play for. So like you would get, I don't know, so that must leave, like, Partick must be playing Livy on the last day then. So they two might actually still be playing for something on that last day. You just never know, but...
I mean, Airdrie go to Falkirk on Saturday, so, you know, Falkirk have got a chance to do something really funny, obviously, and screw Dunfermline over, but I don't see them doing it. I don't see McGlynn letting Falkirk do that. So you've got to fancy they're not going to necessarily pick up any on them on Saturday. Dunfermline are at home to Livingston, who are obviously still kind of hanging about in there. So,
but they're not, because they've got 75 of the regions away on international duty.
Oh, of course, that game's off, isn't it? Yeah.
Which actually is the stupidest thing ever, because they're now going to have 2 games in a week at some point in 2 or 3 weeks' time to make up that game, and that's probably going to bite them.
They've got Ayr away on the 29th of March, then they played Livy at home 2nd of April, and then again they've got Hamilton on the 5th. So that's they've got a big week there.
What I would
I'm at this point, I really think, based on all the evidence, everything we've seen recently, even aside from the fact it would obviously be the funniest outcome, right now, I think Dunfermline will finish bottom.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Because the other big thing is, Hamilton have still got the ability to sack John Rankin.
Yeah.
And like, would you be at all surprised if they lost their next few, but then with 4 games to go, like, sacked them, brought in, pick a name, Stuart Kettlewell, and he comes in and he shitfests 7 points in his last 4
Ian
games.
Murray.
I'm just going to add as well.
Absolutely.
Like,
Callum Davidson.
Say you're someone like Ian Murray, Callum Davidson, Stuart Kettlewell. You look at that Dunfermline side, and obviously there's experience in there, but then there's a lot of dross in there. There's a lot of players that get injuries frequently that, while they're great players, great, come on, settle down.
They're players.
Decent players. So the likes of your Chris Kane, Matty Todds, etc. Like serviceable championship players. Very injury prone. And then you've just got a lot of jobbers in there that just don't care, or players that are just never really should be at this level. Are you looking at that job saying, like, look, Dunfermline are obviously, they've got a decent fan base, but they're not they're an inconsistent championship team. You've got John Colquhoun pulling in signings from wherever. Is that going to influence you? And if you're looking at a team that are potentially looking at a relegation battle, do you pick up that job? Or do you wait?
I can't see any chance of them switching Tidser now. There's surely not a chance. They're not.
Because I think it would be hugely embarrassing for their board. Like everything that's been said about our board this season, with like Ian Murray on the first day, fair enough. We didn't all agree with it. We all had our perspectives on it. You can take whatever was said by the board at that point. Then Neil Collins comes in after a lot of nonsense with David Healy doing his best to get a new contract at Linfield. Collins goes, and then we quickly bring in Barry Robson. For everything that goes there, if they bring in Tidser and then sack him, that's far more embarrassing in my book.
Especially after taking so long to get him paying for him.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, they must have just had to pay so much money for compensation on him. Well, and he's on a 2.5-year deal now.
Aye. I mean, they spent money to free him for Kelly, but the other thing
they chucked it at Kelly.
I realise we're now just taking like free shots from anywhere, but must have spent six figures in January.
Yeah,
between Connor Young and is it Keith Bray from Cali Thistle? They loaned them straight back again, but still, like 6 figures. And again, to go back to what we were saying before about, you know, like staying away from relegation 101. The amount of guys who are in like Premiership squads who aren't really quite getting a game at the moment. Guys like what's his name, Docherty at Dundee United.
Yeah.
I can't believe me think of what his first name is.
Ross
Docherty. Thank you. So he's the kind of guy where you go, right, well, let's just take a tiny fraction of that money and say, right, Ross, you want to just come in, win us some points. Good enough to do it. Couple of guys like that. These guys are there. Aye, it's just guys who have been around, done it before, know what they're doing, and instead, but the amount of money they've spent to still be absolutely dreadful is criminal. First of all,
and the worst bit of all of it, I was saying earlier on about how I think he's just overcomplicated things and tried to kind of build this philosophy. So Lanzarote John came in and did a job with the squad that was there already.
Yeah.
He almost proved the concept. If we just get them to do the basics and they do it well, we can get a point off Falkirk, we can beat Partick Thistle. Do you know what I mean? We can actually be a serviceable championship side. He proved the concept. And then they went, nah.
They scored 7 goals in the 2 games that he was in charge. Like,
yeah,
what they scored? They scored 7 goals in 15 away league games this season. 4 of them were in that one game at Firhill.
Because he just went, right, here's a formation all you have played since you were children. You know what you're doing. Don't mess about with it. Don't, take chances. Go, work hard, see how you get on. And if they'd just done that from the minute he was in charge until now, they'd be 8th, but they'd have 9 more points than they've got at the moment, or whatever.
I feel like that's what we've done, though. It's that thing of, do you know what, boys? This is no going to be pretty, but we'll survive.
Yeah, and we'll be here next season. It's like Ian Murray's first season. It's very much we got there in the end. It wasn't pretty, but then we still had enough in the tank to be able to pick teams off. Again, just to actually focus on the Rovers rather than the hysterical laughter at Dunfermline that we've been doing for the last hour and 27 minutes, is effectively we're up to 37 points. If we get 2 more wins, I think that's just basically mathematically safe, pretty much. Just in the sense of I would say,
we're safe.
But Dunfermline only get 10 points for the rest of the season, let alone 10 more than us.
Well, I think
exactly.
Dunfermline, Hamilton, Airdrie. You need 2 of them. Not a chance.
Definitely not. Definitely not bottom. But even if you went down the fact of bottom 2, then you're going Queen's Park, Hamilton, Dunfermline, all taking points off each other. Plus, we've got Morton in there, who are basically relying on, I think, a 17-year-old up top. That's basically
scored though.
Yeah, he did score, which is more than could be said for Dunfermline. It's great that we're almost at that point that we can just focus on whatever we're doing in the summer, and wherever Barry Robson's going to take us in terms of like his philosophy, direction that he's going with players and that. Because again, a lot got made about us in terms of how poor we've been, and Raith Rovers might be in a bit of a relegation. Special mention, by the way, just while I'm thinking about it, Scott Ingalls. Yeah, you were mentioning Raith Rovers being in our banter years, was it? Yeah. Throwback to that.
He's been very quiet.
Yeah.
Hope he's okay.
He's only quiet because he's blocking everybody.
You okay,
Yeah.
man?
Right, we'll end on man of the match because I do want to end on a kind of positive Rovers note. But before we get to that, I was very much amused by. So I have to tell you, I haven't seen Chris Hamilton's interview. Just I don't know. It's by all means he said it was.
Blair
there was
doesn't
nothing in
watch
the
it.
game.
Nothing between
I've also not watched Barry Robson.
Nothing between the teams, I think, was the words that were put in his mouth, and then he agreed with. Well,
2 goals for starters. The Barry, just as an aside, I thought Barry Robson's post-match interview was really interesting. He was talking a lot about how they've been coaching Finlay Pollock. That really demonstrated the value of post-match interviews. But slightly less value the post-match interview. So Kevin McDonald, as we've already made reference to, did the post-match interview because Michael Tidser had lost his voice. Just so funny.
Despite being on BBC Scotland earlier in the night doing an interview.
Like, just...
You would understand if he'd been on the sidelines screaming that he had literally lost his voice. He was sat down for 45 minutes questioning his life, I think, at one point. Because he was going, what the hell is going on here? That this is not a team that I want.
Should have just asked Allan. Allan would have given him a shot in the tannoy.
Really?
Obviously, like, you can lose your voice, right? That is obviously a thing that can happen. It's very rare for it to happen, like, completely. And if it did, especially given the game was on the BBC, I think I would have felt, like, duty-bound to basically, even if you have to take the assistant with you, just to go and just like croak out 4 words just to be like, I have actually lost my voice. Because it's such a ridiculous thing otherwise.
Totally.
To not have like the evidence for it. And like...
Was there nothing post-match from the BBC either then, I take it?
No.
Or did this boy do that one as well?
It was just
Now,
Robson
to be fair,
and Pollock that had been up at the gantry.
A lot of the time with the BBC, because the programme doesn't run on for that much longer, they don't always do stuff for the losing side anyway.
People asking when Rebus is on.
You'd think. Anyway, so they sent Kevin McDonald, and like I don't entirely disagree with what he was saying. Basically, what he said was, and it's a very funny thing to say after a defeat, was that it was quite a scrappy game, and they're not very good at that. So if it had been an incredible game of football, they'd have been fine. But the fact that we are quite scrappy, they just have no plan for. It's never occurred to them that in the Scottish Championship, the game might be a wee bit scrappy. They don't have a plan for that. Not prepared.
That doesn't bode well for a relegation fight.
Had they turned up to start
Data does not tell you anything about the Scottish Championship.
Pep Guardiola's Barcelona had turned up in Rovers jerseys, Dunfermline would have been fine. But as it was, given that Raith Rovers turned up in Raith Rovers jerseys, no idea what to do. Can't counter that at all. And what he said was, Raith were better at the scrappy bits. They were better at the rubbish. Now, I'm going to disagree with you there, mate. I thought Dunfermline were absolutely exemplary when it came to the rubbish. That was some of the best rubbish I have ever seen.
Is that what he said? They were better at the rubbish.
He said we were better at the rubbish.
See, this is why post-match interviews are fucking worthless.
And then you had
absolutely worthless.
I'm not letting him away with it. Chris Hamilton, the interview sort of tees him up and he says, didn't seem to be too much in the match. And he's like, nah, there wasn't too much in the match. I'll tell you, Chris, there was 2 goals in the match. I really enjoyed those.
And I mean, I could have played in goals for Rovers and the score would have been the same. Because not only did Josh Ray not have a save to make, he didn't even really have a difficult cross to take. Or he had that one where he punched it and it smacked somebody in the coop in the stand, which was quite funny, actually. Apologies if you're listening.
Was so bad. Hurt, but...
Oh, was it?
He was apologising and stuff. I thought it was a wee boy, but it wasn't at all. It was a full-grown man, and he gave him his shit at the end of the game. It was brilliant.
Right, let's do man of the match. Let's let people who are listening get back to the rest of their days. Robbie, you can start man of the match and notable mentions, please.
Start with the notable mentions. I felt that the midfield duo of Ross Matthews and Jordan Doherty, I thought Jordan Doherty looked like he played there for years. I thought he had a really, really good game. They just did all the scrappy bits, as you'd expect. Callum Fordyce came back in. He had a really assured performance alongside Ewan Murray. I know a lot's been made about those two getting back into the team, but yeah, it just looked very naturalised. Josh Millen did absolutely fine at wing back, which was good, considering all my concerns pre-match. I'm going to give the man of the match, though. I would give it to Paul Hanlon. Of course, Finlay Pollock gets the goal, really well taken, and him and Gullen do a lot of work. But Hanlon to get a goal, have a big part in the first as well. And yeah, just overall, really, really solid performance. Once again, just proving he's, for all the critics that have been there about our signing policy, you would absolutely take that ahead of what was on offer for our opposition.
Absolutely. Alan, Josh Ray, man of the match for you, presumably.
Yeah, he's piping slippers. In terms of, I'd go one further actually than Robbie would say. I thought the midfield three all had a really good game. I think Dylan Easton's bar is set so high that if he just meets it, he doesn't necessarily get the credit he's there. I thought he had a great game in terms of, he puts in a power of work, and he was winning tackle. The ball through was outstanding. I thought there was a point actually, Jordan Doherty went on this little kind of mazy run, and I genuinely thought it was Easton. It was that nice. And then it was only when he passed the ball to Easton, I was like, oh, bloody hell, that was Doherty. I thought I agree. I thought he had a really decent game in there. I thought Fordyce had a sticky start, but as he said in his own post-match interview, he's still getting up to speed. But I thought they did all really well. Pollock, great effort. I thought, the whole team I thought did really well. I would actually give man of the match to Gullen. I thought the work he put in was outstanding. He gave the defenders absolutely no peace, and his delivery for a free kick was worthy of it on its own. It was just one of the nicest. Like, you couldn't ask for more from a cross if you were attacking, and you couldn't ask for anything worse if it defended. It was just perfect.
I'll get the people back to their day a little bit quicker and just say everything Alan said. I'm with him completely.
Fair play. Scott, anything to add?
Not too much, no. I think
could you just mention Lewis Stevenson, just so because I think literally everyone else has mentioned. So
he was mince.
Lewis was absolutely fine, did nothing wrong. But I did actually think when we were mentioning Fordyce there, I think I said to my dad at half time that I thought Fordyce was really scrappy with the ball at his feet. He gave away too many passes for my liking really cheaply. And on another day with a better team, they could have punished us for that. But thankfully, second half I thought he was rock solid. But the first half I did think some of his passing was not that great. But again, as he said in his interview, he did say that and we knew that he had been really ill over the winter time and was really struggling. But it's good to see him back and actually starting to play games again. But yeah, for my man of the match, I kind of said to my mates it was either going to be Hanlon or Pollock. They both scored, obviously kept a clean sheet as well for Hanlon, but the two of them I just thought stood out quite a lot. Whilst everyone else was a 7, 8 out of 10 anyway, but I just thought they two just got it for me as well.
Yeah, I was actually going to say something very, very similar on Fordyce. It was just before half-time. He stepped out the defence a little bit, played a brilliant little pass into the channel for Pollock, and it felt like he never sort of looked back after that. It was like that was the moment he needed to kind of be like, right, I have now grown into this game. And absolutely rock solid. I'm gonna go for Paul Hanlon as well. Partly because I think he's been he should have been like second place for man of the match.
Yeah,
every other game we've had. But there maybe wasn't an awful lot of sort of, I don't know what you call active defending. He wasn't constantly making last man tackles. I think there was a lot of that where he was just killing stuff very early doors as well. We know that Chris Kane on his day can be very dangerous, and he just spent even running about.
He spent a lot more game on his halves than he did with the ball at his feet, falling over, looking for free kicks, moaning at the ref. Brilliant.
That's it. Just got absolutely nothing out of him at all. Right, excellent. That's been thoroughly enjoyable. So Thank you, Rovers. Thank you, Michael Tidser. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We will be back at some point midweek to preview another Friday night game. This time the Rovers going to Firhill for what I suppose is a bit of a do-or-die game as far as our sort of playoff promotion playoff chances are concerned. And I will try and work out how to say that properly by the time we come back. And we'll,
unless you get laryngitis.
You might lose your voice.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going around.
Send Kevin McDonald in my place.
Please don't.
Sorry, we're capable of doing the rubbish without you anyway.
Yeah, even better at the rubbish. Right, brilliant. Thank you, everybody. We will speak to you again soon. Goodbye.